Months had passed since the dramatic court cases and arrests. Solomon had begun to focus more on his life with Naomi, who was now expecting their first child. The chaos that Sasha and the doctor had caused was starting to fade into the background, and Solomon was finally finding peace. One afternoon, as Solomon was sitting in his living room reading, the doorbell rang. To his surprise, it was Sasha's parents and the doctor's wife, Maria. They looked tired and anxious, clearly worn down by the months of worry and guilt. They had come with a single purpose: to plead for mercy. Maria spoke first, her voice trembling. "Mr. Solomon, we know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we are here to ask for it. My husband made terrible mistakes, and I know what Sasha did was unforgivable. But they have both suffered in prison, and we are asking you to help them have a second chance." Sasha's parents joined in, their voices heavy with regret. "Please, Mr. Solomon," they said, "we're not asking for much, just for you to consider letting them out. Sasha is our beloved daughter, and she's learned her lesson. We promise she won't cause any more trouble." Solomon listened quietly, his face unreadable. He had every reason to refuse their request. The pain and humiliation they had caused him and Naomi was still fresh in his mind. But deep down, he was not a man who found joy in seeing others suffer, no matter their mistakes. After a long silence, Solomon finally spoke. "I'm not sure I can ever fully forgive what they did, but I do understand the value of a second chance. People can change, and sometimes they need the opportunity to prove it." He sighed, as if carrying the weight of the decision on his shoulders. "I will agree to help release them from prison, but only if they truly intend to change their ways." Maria and Sasha's parents were overwhelmed with gratitude. They promised that Sasha and the doctor would both take responsibility for their actions and would not cause any more harm. Solomon nodded slowly, indicating that he was willing to take a step toward granting them freedom. Although Solomon had agreed to show some mercy to Sasha and the doctor, he remained firm in his stance regarding the corrupt judge. While Sasha's parents and Maria were hopeful after Solomon's decision to help release their loved ones, they knew better than to ask for leniency regarding the judge. The damage caused by his bribery and manipulation ran deep, and his involvement had shaken Solomon's trust in the legal system. The judge's imprisonment was a warning to others who would consider abusing their power. Solomon, now fully aware of how corruption could ruin lives, was determined to see that justice was served without compromise. The judge's greed had led him to accept bribes, altering the course of people's lives for personal gain. Solomon knew that releasing the judge would undermine any progress toward accountability and fairness. In prison, the judge had no support from the same people who once sought his favor. He was isolated, reflecting on the choices that had led him there. News of Sasha and the doctor's potential release only made his situation feel more unjust. While they had at least some hope for redemption, he was left to face the full consequences of his actions. The legal community and the public viewed him with disdain, marking him as an example of what happens when those in power misuse it. Sasha's parents and Maria dared not mention the judge's situation during their meeting with Solomon. They understood that asking for more mercy than what was already granted would be seen as greedy and disrespectful. They were relieved to have secured a second chance for Sasha and the doctor, even if it meant the judge's fate was sealed. Meanwhile, Solomon felt conflicted. Although he had agreed to forgive Sasha and the doctor to some extent, he couldn't ignore the lingering bitterness toward the judge. He had placed his trust in the legal system only to be betrayed by the very person sworn to uphold the law. Naomi supported Solomon's decision, reminding him that some wrongs could not be simply forgiven. After being released from prison, Sasha found herself back in her parents' house, a place that now felt more like a prison than a home. Her once luxurious life had crumbled, and the reality of her situation began to sink in. The grand house she had bought after receiving the 100 million naira from Solomon was gone. It had been seized to cover her legal troubles, leaving her with nothing but the scorn of those she once trusted. Sasha's mother, who had been supportive at the beginning, now looked at her daughter with bitterness. The resentment stemmed from Sasha's earlier decision to abandon them. When Sasha received the money, instead of helping her struggling family, she had packed her things and moved out. She had left them behind in their old run-down home while she enjoyed her new wealth. Now, with nothing left, she had come crawling back. The anger in her mother's heart manifested in constant insults and harsh words. "You were so quick to leave us when you had money, but look where that greed got you," her mother would say, her voice filled with disdain. "You've brought nothing but shame to this family. You thought you could outsmart everyone, and now look at the mess you've created." These words stung Sasha deeply, bringing her to tears almost every day. She regretted her actions, but it was too late to change anything. The once confident woman now felt trapped and defeated. Each insult from her mother reminded her of the consequences of her choices, filling her with guilt and regret. Despite her sorrow, she couldn't find the strength to stand up for herself. She felt like she had no right to, considering the hurt she had caused. On the other side of town, the doctor's life was falling apart as well. He had lost everything: his job, his reputation, and now even his marriage. His wife, Maria, who had initially stood by him, had grown tired of the burden of taking care of him. With his medical license revoked and no income, he had become completely dependent on her. Their relationship, once built on trust and mutual respect, had turned into a source of frustration and bitterness. One evening, Maria finally reached her breaking point. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore," she said, packing her bags. "I've been carrying this weight for too long. You lost everything because of your greed, and now I'm the one suffering. I'm tired of being responsible for you when all you bring is stress and shame." The doctor pleaded with her to stay, but Maria's mind was made up. She walked out the door, leaving him alone in the small apartment they could barely afford. Her departure left a void in his life, adding to the loneliness and regret that consumed him. He had gambled everything for money and power, and in the end, he lost it all. Now, with no job and no family, the doctor's thoughts became increasingly dark. He blamed Sasha for everything, convinced that if he hadn't gotten involved in her scheme, his life wouldn't have fallen apart. Yet deep down, he knew he had only himself to blame. It was his greed that had led him down this path, and now he was paying the price. As days turned into weeks, both Sasha and the doctor lived in misery. Sasha, tormented by her mother's constant abuse and her own guilt, struggled to find any sense of peace. The dreams of wealth and power that had once driven her had turned into nightmares of shame and regret. Sasha could no longer tolerate the constant bullying from her parents. Each day at home felt like a never-ending barrage of insults and harsh reminders of her failure. Her mother's words pierced her like knives, and her father's silence spoke volumes of his disappointment. Tired and feeling hopeless, Sasha decided she had to leave. With nowhere else to go, she packed up her few belongings and made a difficult choice. She would move in with the doctor. Although their past together was filled with betrayal and manipulation, Sasha saw the doctor as her only option. After all, he was the father of her twins, and despite everything, there was still a twisted connection between them. When she arrived at his small, run-down apartment, the doctor was surprised to see her. They hadn't spoken much since the court case, and he was still bitter about how she had refused to give him any money. However, seeing her standing there, broken and desperate, he let her in. Life in the doctor's house was far from ideal, but Sasha felt some relief from the constant torment she faced at home. Yet even in this new setting, old habits returned quickly. The two of them couldn't resist thinking of a way to claw their way back into Solomon's life and his money. They both knew that trying to get the upper hand on Solomon would be difficult after everything that had happened. But desperation has a way of making people reckless. Over late-night conversations filled with bitterness and regret, they hatched a plan. They agreed that Sasha would go to Solomon's house, beg for forgiveness, and try to win back her old job as his housekeeper. The doctor knew that Solomon still had a soft spot for helping those in need, and they decided to exploit that kindness. Their plan was simple, but risky. If Sasha could convince Solomon that she was truly sorry for everything and that she had learned her lesson, maybe he would take pity on her. Once she was back in his house, they could start plotting their next move. This time, they would be smarter, more careful, and make sure they secured enough money to disappear for good. The next morning, Sasha prepared herself for what she knew would be one of the hardest performances of her life. She dressed modestly and made sure to look humble and remorseful. As she stood outside Solomon's mansion, her heart raced. The last time she was here, she had been full of pride, arrogance, and greed. Now she had to pretend to be a changed person. She knocked on the door, and when it opened, she was face to face with Naomi. The coldness in Naomi's eyes sent a chill down Sasha's spine. Naomi immediately tensed up, ready to slam the door in Sasha's face, but Sasha quickly spoke, her voice trembling. "Please, Naomi, I know I don't deserve this, but I'm here to ask for forgiveness. I've lost everything, and I just want a chance to make things right." Naomi, still angry and suspicious, didn't trust a word Sasha said. But before she could respond, Solomon appeared. He looked at Sasha with a mixture of surprise and wariness. "What are you doing here?" he asked sternly. Sasha took a deep breath, forcing herself to look as pitiful as possible. "I'm here to apologize, Solomon. I know I've made terrible mistakes, and I regret everything. I was blinded by greed, and I hurt so many people in the process. But now I'm lost, with nowhere to go. All I'm asking for is a chance to work and earn a living honestly. Please, let me have my job back. I'll do anything to prove I've changed." Solomon studied her carefully. He had a hard time believing Sasha had truly changed, but he also saw how broken she seemed. Part of him wanted to help, but he was no fool. He knew that trusting her again could backfire, and he had no intention of letting her anywhere near his family without careful consideration. Naomi, however, was not as forgiving. "You must be joking if you think we're going to let you back into our lives after everything you've done. You nearly ruined us, Sasha. How do we know this isn't just another one of your schemes?" Sasha let tears stream down her face, hoping to break through their defenses. "I have nothing left, Naomi. No money, no home, no pride. I'm begging you, give me one last chance. I just want to work and survive." Solomon, feeling a twinge of sympathy despite his better judgment, told Sasha he would think about it and let her know his decision later. Sasha left the house, forcing herself to keep up the act until she was out of sight. Once she returned to the doctor's place, she recounted everything that happened. The doctor smirked, pleased with her performance, but they both knew the hardest part was yet to come. As they waited for Solomon's decision, both Sasha and the doctor felt the weight of their gamble. They were playing a dangerous game, and if they weren't careful, it could end even worse than before. But for people as desperate as they were, the risk seemed worth it. 2 days later, Sasha's phone rang. It was Solomon. Her heart raced as she answered, hoping her plan had worked. Solomon's voice was calm but firm. "Sasha, I've thought about what you said. I can't give you your old job back. There's just too much damage, and I need to protect my family. But if you really need help, I'm willing to give you some money to start a small business. Something to help you get back on your feet." Sasha felt a wave of anger rise within her. This wasn't what she wanted. A small business. She had no interest in running a shop or selling goods. She wanted power, wealth, and control over Solomon's life. But she knew better than to show her frustration, so she forced a polite thank you and ended the call. When the doctor came home later that evening, he immediately noticed Sasha's sour mood. "What's wrong? Did Solomon call?" "Yes," Sasha replied bitterly. "He said he won't give me my job back. Instead, he's offering to help me start a small business. Can you believe that? That's not what I want. I need to be close to him, in his house, so we can find a way to take what's ours." The doctor's face twisted into a cunning smile. "Well, if being close to Solomon is what you want, then we need stronger tactics. There's a native doctor I know in a village not too far from here. He's known for powerful charms that can do exactly what you need. If you get the right charm, Solomon won't be able to resist you. He'll push Naomi out of the house and make you his woman, either as his girlfriend or even as a wife." Sasha's eyes lit up with interest. "Will it really work?" she asked, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Trust me," the doctor said confidently. "This man has done wonders for people who were desperate, just like us. All you need to do is go there and tell him exactly what you want." Without wasting any time, Sasha made up her mind to visit the native doctor. Early the next morning, she took a bus to the village the doctor had mentioned. The journey was long and tiring, but she was driven by her determination to get what she wanted. She couldn't let this opportunity slip away. When she arrived in the village, the locals directed her to a small hidden hut deep in the forest. The atmosphere around the hut was eerie, with the sounds of distant drums and the scent of burning herbs filling the air. Sasha felt a shiver of fear but pushed it aside. She was ready to do whatever it took. The native doctor was an old man with piercing eyes that seemed to see straight into Sasha's soul. He welcomed her with a knowing smile, as if he already knew why she had come. Sasha nervously explained her situation, carefully choosing her words to describe exactly what she wanted. She wanted Solomon to fall under her spell, to see her as the perfect woman and push Naomi out of his life for good. The native doctor listened in silence, nodding occasionally. After she finished, he spoke in a deep, raspy voice. "You have come to the right place. I can give you what you seek, but know that such power comes at a price. You must follow my instructions exactly, and you must be ready to deal with the consequences." Sasha, eager to move forward, quickly agreed. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said. The native doctor went to the back of his hut and returned with a small black bag filled with strange-looking items. He handed the bag to Sasha and began to explain how the charm worked. "Every night, before you sleep, sprinkle this powder in front of your door and say Solomon's name 3 times. After that, burn this incense and imagine Solomon coming to you, leaving his wife behind. Do this for 7 nights straight, and you will see the results." He paused and looked at her intently. "Remember, if you break the instructions or use the charm with any doubt in your heart, it will backfire. You must be fully committed." Sasha nodded eagerly, holding the bag tightly. She left the village with a renewed sense of purpose. She was confident that once she used the charm, Solomon would be hers. All the suffering she had endured would finally pay off, and she would get the life she always dreamed of. Living in Solomon's mansion, taking Naomi's place, and controlling everything. As she returned home, her mind raced with plans. She could already picture Solomon by her side, showering her with the wealth and status she craved. All she needed to do now was follow the native doctor's instructions carefully and wait for the magic to take effect. Sasha followed the native doctor's instructions to the letter. Each night she sprinkled the powder in front of her door, muttered Solomon's name 3 times, and burned the incense as she was told. She focused all her thoughts on making Solomon hers, imagining him leaving Naomi and coming to her with open arms. By the 7th night, she was filled with anticipation, eager to see if the charm had really worked. On the morning of the 8th day, Sasha's phone rang. When she saw that it was Solomon calling, her heart skipped a beat. She quickly answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hello, Solomon," she said, hoping she didn't sound too eager. Solomon's voice came through calm and straightforward. "Sasha, I've been thinking about everything, and I've decided to give you your job back. You can start next week." Sasha could hardly believe what she was hearing. The charm had worked. She felt a rush of excitement and satisfaction. "Thank you, Solomon," she replied, pretending to be modest, though inside she was grinning from ear to ear. "I really appreciate this chance to make things right." After hanging up, Sasha felt a surge of power. She had done it. She was back in Solomon's life. This was the first step toward getting everything she wanted. With her job back, she would have easy access to Solomon's home and could start working on the next part of her plan, slowly pushing Naomi out of the picture. Sasha wasted no time preparing for her return. She went out shopping, buying new clothes and accessories to make herself look as polished and appealing as possible. She wanted to show Solomon that she was the perfect woman for him, better than Naomi in every way. She even practiced acting sweet and humble, knowing that it would help her win Solomon's defenses. The doctor, noticing how happy Sasha was, asked her what had happened. When she told him that Solomon had called to give her back her job, he was both impressed and concerned. "So the charm really worked," he said, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "This could be our big chance. Once you're close to Solomon again, we need to think about how to get more money out of him. Maybe we can convince him to make bigger investments that we can control." Sasha nodded in agreement. "Exactly, but we have to move carefully. I can't risk losing his trust too quickly. First, I'll focus on making him see me as someone he needs in his life, someone better than his wife." The doctor grinned slyly. "You're playing this smart, Sasha. Just remember, you can't let emotions get in the way. Stick to the plan, and soon we'll both be living the life we deserve." Sasha felt more confident than ever. The charm had given her a boost, and now she was determined to take full advantage of the opportunity. As the days passed, she carefully rehearsed how she would behave when she started working at Solomon's house again. She knew that she needed to be patient, but also strategic. Winning over Solomon wasn't just about being nice. It was about making him see Naomi as a burden and herself as the perfect partner. When the day finally came for Sasha to start working again, she entered Solomon's house with a calm, polite demeanor. Naomi gave her a suspicious look, but Sasha greeted her with fake warmth, pretending that she held no grudges. Inside, though, Sasha was already plotting her next move. She was going to get close to Solomon, make him depend on her, and then slowly drive a wedge between him and Naomi. As she went about her tasks, Sasha made sure to be extra attentive to Solomon's needs, always ready with a smile and a kind word. She even started subtly pointing out Naomi's flaws, making it seem like she was just trying to be helpful. Whenever Naomi made a small mistake, Sasha would make sure to mention it to Solomon in a concerned tone, planting seeds of doubt in his mind. Meanwhile, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She noticed how Solomon seemed less attentive to her and more distracted whenever Sasha was around. But she couldn't put her finger on exactly what was happening, and that's exactly what Sasha wanted: confuse Naomi, frustrate her, and slowly push her out of Solomon's heart. Days turned into weeks, and Sasha could see the changes starting to happen. Solomon was gradually warming up to her. As the weeks went by, Sasha's influence over Solomon grew stronger. She played her cards carefully, always making sure to appear loyal and caring whenever Solomon was around. Before long, Solomon began giving Sasha large sums of money, supposedly to help with her twins' education and other expenses. He did this behind Naomi's back, knowing she would never approve. Sasha, feeling victorious, took the money without hesitation. She even managed to convince Solomon to give the doctor a generous amount to start a business, as if rewarding him for the role he played in their twisted scheme. Solomon justified these actions to himself, thinking he was only helping her kids and a friend in need. Meanwhile, Naomi started to notice the sudden change in Solomon's behavior. His once warm and loving attitude towards her was replaced by coldness and indifference. Every time she brought up her concerns about how much he was spending on Sasha, Solomon would dismiss her angrily. "If you can't stand me helping people, then maybe you should pack your things and leave," he snapped one day. The harshness in his voice left Naomi stunned. She was heavily pregnant, and the stress of Solomon's words weighed on her. Naomi felt like her world was crumbling. She had sacrificed so much for this marriage, including her job. Ironically, it was Solomon who had insisted that she stop working to focus on building a family. But now, whenever she asked him for money, even for basic things like antenatal care, he would refuse. "Why don't you go and work for it?" he would say coldly. Naomi couldn't believe that this was the same man who once begged her to stay home and be a devoted wife. There were nights when Naomi would cry herself to sleep, wondering where it had all gone wrong. She would sit in her bedroom, clutching her pregnant belly, praying for things to get better. The man who once showered her with love and affection now treated her like an outsider in her own home. When she asked him for money for her hospital visits, Solomon would give excuses or tell her to stop being a burden. His words cut deep, leaving Naomi feeling worthless and isolated. Sasha, on the other hand, was living her best life. The money Solomon gave her allowed her to live comfortably, and she flaunted her new lifestyle shamelessly. She knew Naomi was suffering, and that knowledge gave her a twisted sense of satisfaction. Sasha continued to manipulate Solomon, pretending to be humble and grateful while secretly enjoying every bit of Naomi's misery. Naomi grew more and more frustrated. She couldn't understand why Solomon was acting this way. She tried talking to him, pleading for his attention and support, especially now that she was carrying their child. "Why are you treating me like this, Solomon? I'm your wife, and I'm pregnant with your child," she would say, tears streaming down her face. But Solomon's heart seemed to have turned to stone. "You're just nagging, Naomi. If you don't like how things are, there's the door." Each time Solomon dismissed her, Naomi's heart broke a little more. She felt trapped, too pregnant to leave, but too hurt to stay. The emotional and financial neglect weighed heavily on her, and she often wondered how much more she could take. She had no job, no income, and the man she loved had become a stranger. The stress was becoming unbearable, but she held on for the sake baby. One day, things took an even darker turn when Sasha, who was growing more confident in her control over Solomon, decided that she was tired of Naomi's presence in the house. With a cold heart, she demanded that Solomon get rid of his wife. "I'm tired of seeing her around here," Sasha said, with a smug smile on her face. "If you really care about me and our kids, you'll chase her away." To everyone's surprise, Solomon, blinded by whatever spell Sasha had over him, agreed. Without considering the consequences, he told Naomi to pack her things and leave the house. Naomi, shocked and heartbroken, couldn't believe that the man she loved was throwing her out just because Sasha told him to. But it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was knowing that she was being replaced in her own home while heavily pregnant. With tears in her eyes and no other option, Naomi packed her belongings and left. She returned to her parents' house, feeling defeated and utterly broken. Her parents were furious when they heard what had happened. They couldn't believe that Solomon had stooped so low, and they immediately tried to contact him to make him see reason. But Solomon wouldn't answer their calls, completely shutting them out. Meanwhile, back at the doctor's house, things were taking a different turn. His wife, Maria, had heard through the grapevine that her husband was now doing well financially, thanks to the money Solomon had given him to start a business. Maria, who had left him when he lost his job, was now suddenly interested in rekindling their relationship. Whenever Sasha wasn't home, Maria would visit the doctor, sweet-talking him and begging for his forgiveness. At first, the doctor was cold towards Maria. He hadn't forgotten how she abandoned him when he was at his lowest, and he reminded her of how she had walked out when he needed her the most. But Maria was persistent. She apologized repeatedly, promising that she had learned her lesson and that she only left because she was frustrated with their situation. Slowly, the doctor began to soften, and before long, he forgave Maria and allowed her back into his life. They began to secretly see each other whenever Sasha was away. What Sasha didn't know was that the doctor was already making plans to leave her. He was tired of all the drama and manipulation. He had realized that staying with Sasha would only bring more trouble. His plan was to take their twins, along with Maria and his other children, and disappear. He knew that if he stayed, Sasha's greed and schemes would only drag him down further. Sasha, oblivious to the doctor's plans, continued to live as if she had everything under control. She felt proud of herself, thinking that she had won by getting Solomon to herself and pushing Naomi out of the picture. Little did she know that the people closest to her were already plotting to leave her behind. Back at Naomi's parents' house, Naomi was trying to pick up the pieces of her life. She was surrounded by the love and support of her family, but the pain of what Solomon had done still weighed heavily on her. She couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong. Her parents encouraged her to stay strong and assured her that they would stand by her no matter what. But even as they comforted her, they couldn't hide their own anger and disappointment at how Solomon had treated their daughter. As the days went by, Naomi struggled to come to terms with her situation. She couldn't stop thinking about how easily Solomon had been manipulated and how quickly he had turned his back on her. The thought of raising her child alone weighed heavily on her, but she knew she had to stay strong for the sake of her baby. As time passed, Sasha found herself developing deeper feelings for Solomon, feelings she hadn't expected. What had started as a plan to secure money and control over him was now turning into something else. She couldn't deny that she was growing attached to him. Whenever Solomon showered her with attention, gifts, and care, Sasha's heart softened. The plan to manipulate him was slowly turning into genuine affection. The doctor, however, was quick to notice the change in Sasha's behavior. He could see that she was no longer fully focused on their original scheme. Instead of keeping her eyes on the goal, getting Solomon's money and moving on, Sasha seemed to be falling for him. She would often talk about how kind Solomon had become and how well he treated her and the twins. This wasn't what the doctor had in mind. He had only agreed to the plan for financial gain, not for Sasha to catch feelings. One evening, when Sasha returned to the doctor's house after spending time with Solomon, the doctor confronted her. His voice was laced with frustration as he asked, "Sasha, what's happening? You're losing focus. This was never about falling in love. We had a deal. You get close to Solomon for the money, not for romance." Sasha felt cornered. She knew the doctor was right, but she couldn't help how she felt. "I know what we agreed on," she replied, trying to stay calm. "But things have changed. Solomon is more than just a target now. I didn't plan for this, but I care about him." The doctor was furious. "You care about him? Have you forgotten why we started this in the first place? You're risking everything. Do you think he'll really choose you over his wife forever? He'll figure out what's really going on eventually. You need to get back on track, or all of this will blow up in our faces. But Sasha was stubborn. The more she thought about Solomon, the less she cared about the plan she'd made with the doctor. In her mind, if Solomon truly loved her, maybe she could finally have the life she had always dreamed of. A life where she was no longer struggling, where she was the center of someone's world, and where she and her twins were cared for. Despite the doctor's warnings, Sasha continued to get closer to Solomon. She no longer saw the scheme as just a way to make money. Now she wanted more. She wanted to be the woman in Solomon's life permanently, not just a temporary distraction. This shift in Sasha's intentions made the doctor feel betrayed and worried. He started thinking about how he could protect himself and still get the money he desired. Sasha was no longer a reliable partner in their plot. The tension between Sasha and the doctor grew with each passing day. While Sasha was caught up in her newfound feelings for Solomon, the doctor was busy plotting his next move. He knew that if he didn't act soon, he could lose everything. But Sasha was blinded by her emotions, making her vulnerable to the consequences that were creeping closer. Naomi was overjoyed when she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She hoped that the arrival of their child would soften Solomon's heart and bring him back to his senses. Despite everything, she still believed he would come around and be a responsible father. With excitement, she tried calling Solomon to share the good news, but he didn't answer her calls. Disappointed, Naomi sent him a message, informing him about the birth of their son. When Solomon finally replied, his words were cold and heartless. He simply said, "It's not my business. I'm not responsible for your child." Naomi was heartbroken. She couldn't believe how far things had gone. The man she once loved and respected was now denying their child and refusing to be a part of their lives. She wept bitterly, wondering what had happened to the man she married. Meanwhile, Sasha continued to push her agenda. She felt that the time had come for Solomon to fully commit to her. She wanted more than just the money and attention he was giving her. She wanted the title of wife and the security that came with it. So one evening she sat Solomon down and told him directly, "I think it's time for us to get married. I've been patient, and I've done everything you've asked. It's time you made me your wife." But Solomon wasn't ready to make such a big decision. He hesitated and said, "Let's take things easy, Sasha. We don't need to rush into marriage. We're doing fine the way things are." His response left Sasha feeling disappointed and frustrated. She realized that despite all her efforts, she was still just the other woman in his life. Determined not to give up, Sasha decided to seek help from the native doctor once again. She believed that more powerful charms would be the answer. She wanted to make sure Solomon had no choice but to marry her, ensuring that even if things went wrong in the future, she would walk away with a significant share of his wealth. When she arrived at the native doctor's place, she explained her situation. The native doctor listened carefully before telling her, "This time, the charm you're asking for is much more dangerous. It will work, but there's a big condition attached. You must make sure that Solomon never lays eyes on his child. If he sees the child, everything will backfire, and disaster will strike you. Your life will be ruined." Sasha felt a chill run down her spine, but her desperation to secure her position outweighed her fear. She nodded and agreed to follow the native doctor's instructions. She was ready to do whatever it took to make Solomon hers, even if it meant keeping him away from his own child. As she left the native doctor's place, Sasha's mind was racing. She knew she was treading on dangerous ground, but she couldn't turn back now. She was already too deep in her schemes. All she could think about was how close she was to getting everything she ever wanted. She was determined to keep Solomon under her control, no matter the cost. But beneath her confidence, there was a nagging worry. What if something went wrong? What if Solomon found out the truth, or even worse, saw his child? Sasha pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the plan ahead. She would do everything in her power to ensure her success, believing that with the native doctor's help, nothing could go wrong. As the days went by, Sasha began putting her plan into action. She became even more possessive of Solomon, making sure to keep him distracted and away from anything that could lead him back to Naomi or his child. She couldn't afford any mistakes now. Her future depended on it. One evening, she overheard a conversation that revealed a plan that would destroy everything she had worked for. The doctor and his wife, Maria, had been secretly plotting to take the twins and run away, leaving Sasha behind. Furious and feeling betrayed, Sasha knew she had to act fast before they carried out their plan. Without hesitation, she grabbed the gun she had hidden away for emergencies and drove to the doctor's house. When she arrived, she found both the doctor and Maria discussing their escape plan. Without giving them a chance to explain or defend themselves, Sasha raised the gun and shot them both, killing them instantly. Cold and unbothered, she quickly wiped away any evidence linking her to the crime and left the house. Later, Sasha went straight to Solomon's house, acting as if everything was perfectly normal. She smiled, played the role of a loving partner, and pretended nothing had happened. Solomon didn't suspect a thing, too distracted by the everyday stress of his life to notice any change in Sasha's behavior. But fate had other plans. One afternoon, Solomon decided to take a break from his hectic routine. Craving some local food, he went out to a small restaurant he hadn't visited in a while. As he was waiting for his order, he noticed a familiar face across the street. It was Naomi, holding their baby boy in her arms. The sight of his son hit Solomon like a lightning bolt. In that moment, everything changed. It was as if a fog had lifted from his mind, and he suddenly realized all the terrible mistakes he had made. The love for his child flooded back, breaking whatever spell Sasha had cast on him. Overcome with guilt and regret, Solomon rushed to Naomi, begging for forgiveness. "Naomi, I'm so sorry for everything I've done. Please give me a chance to make things right," he pleaded. But Naomi, still hurting from all the pain he had caused her, turned away from him with tears in her eyes. She didn't want to hear any more excuses or promises. She had suffered enough and wasn't ready to trust Solomon again. She held her son close and walked away, leaving Solomon standing there, devastated and full of shame. When Solomon returned home, his mind was in turmoil. The reality of what he had done and how far he had fallen weighed heavily on him. To his shock, he found Sasha sitting comfortably in his living room, as if she belonged there. But this time, instead of feeling the usual pull towards her, he felt nothing but disgust and anger. "What are you doing here, Sasha?" Solomon demanded, his voice cold and sharp. Sasha froze, realizing that something had shifted in him. The power she once held over him was gone. She tried to smile and act innocent, but deep down she knew that her charms had failed. The native doctor's warning echoed in her mind. If Solomon ever saw his child, the spell would be broken, and disaster would follow. Seeing the determination in Solomon's eyes, Sasha panicked. "Solomon, what's wrong? Why are you talking to me like this?" she asked, trying to regain control. But Solomon wasn't fooled anymore. "You're not welcome here, Sasha. Pack your things and get out of my house. I don't want to see you again," he shouted, his voice filled with finality. Sasha's worst fears were coming true. Desperate, she tried to argue and plead, but Solomon wasn't listening. He had finally seen through all the lies and manipulation. With no other choice, Sasha packed her belongings and left, humiliated and defeated. As she walked out of the house, she realized that everything she had schemed for had crumbled to dust. Solomon was left standing in his empty living room, filled with regret, but also with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew he had to find a way to win back Naomi's trust and rebuild his family. This time, he vowed to be a better man, free from the deceit and selfishness that had ruined everything. Sasha rushed home in a panic, her mind racing. As soon as she entered the house, one of her security guards approached her with a grave expression. "Madam, the police are on their way here," he said quietly. The color drained from Sasha's face. She knew this moment was inevitable. They must have found out about the murders of the doctor and his wife. Her carefully constructed lies and manipulations had finally caught up with her. Terror and despair overwhelmed her. She had no way out this time. Looking around at the luxurious surroundings that had once been her pride, Sasha realized it was all meaningless now. In her twisted mind, she convinced herself that if she couldn't have control, she wouldn't let anyone else take it away from her, especially not the police. In a daze, Sasha walked to where her twins were playing, completely unaware of the darkness clouding their mother's heart. She stood over them, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "I'm so sorry. Mommy can't leave you to suffer in this cruel world." Her hands shook as she picked up the gun she had hidden in a drawer. In an act of desperation and madness, Sasha pulled the trigger. The sound echoed through the house, leaving nothing but silence behind. With trembling hands and eyes blurred with tears, she then turned the gun on herself, unable to bear the consequences of her actions. Just as the police broke down the door, it was already too late. Sasha lay lifeless on the floor beside her innocent children, the tragic result of a life consumed by greed and manipulation. When news of Sasha's death spread, Solomon was struck by a deep sense of guilt and sorrow. Though he had long separated himself from Sasha, the horror of what had happened weighed heavily on him. He knew now more than ever that he needed to mend the broken pieces of his life and heal the wounds he had caused. The first step was to make things right with Naomi. Determined to fix his mistakes, Solomon went to Naomi's father's house. When he arrived, the elderly man greeted him with a cold, stern expression. "What do you want, Solomon?" "Haven't you caused enough pain for my daughter and grandson?" he asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. Solomon's eyes filled with regret as he knelt before Naomi's father. "I know I've failed terribly, and I don't deserve anyone's forgiveness. But please, I'm begging you to help me. I love Naomi and our son more than anything. I let my selfishness blind me, and I lost sight of what truly matters. I need to make things right," he pleaded, his voice trembling with sincerity. Naomi's father looked at him for a long moment, searching for any sign of genuine remorse. Finally, he sighed and placed a hand on Solomon's shoulder. "You have caused a lot of harm, Solomon, but I believe everyone deserves a chance to redeem themselves. I'll talk to Naomi, but the rest is up to you. You need to prove to her that you've truly changed and that you're willing to put your family first." Tears filled Solomon's eyes as he nodded gratefully. "Thank you, sir. I won't take this chance for granted. I'll do whatever it takes to earn Naomi's trust and be the father and husband they both deserve," he vowed. As he left, a glimmer of hope flickered in Solomon's heart. He knew it wouldn't be easy to regain Naomi's love and trust, but he was determined to fight for his family. No longer driven by pride or selfish desires, Solomon was ready to build a future based on love, honesty, and commitment. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path, one that could finally lead him back to the people who truly mattered most. Solomon spent the following days reflecting on everything that had happened. He knew he had hurt Naomi deeply and didn't expect forgiveness easily. He planned carefully, understanding that words alone wouldn't be enough to mend the broken trust. He needed to show through his actions that he was genuinely committed to changing and prioritizing his family. One afternoon, Solomon decided to visit Naomi at her father's house again. He brought along gifts for their son and some flowers for Naomi, hoping it would be a small gesture to show his sincerity. As he approached the door, his heart pounded in his chest. He was nervous, unsure if she would even agree to see him. When Naomi's father opened the door, he gave Solomon a small nod, indicating that Naomi was willing to talk. Solomon took a deep breath and stepped inside. Naomi was sitting on the couch, holding their baby boy, looking tired but still as graceful as ever. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a mix of emotions: hurt, anger, and a glimmer of hope. Solomon slowly walked toward her and knelt down, placing the gifts on the table beside her. "Naomi, I know I've been a terrible husband and father. I let greed, foolishness, and pride guide me instead of love and wisdom. I hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for, but I'm here today to ask for one last chance to make things right. I want to be the man you and our son deserve, the man I should have been from the start." Naomi listened quietly, her eyes softening as she saw the sincerity in Solomon's face. She had always loved him deeply, but the betrayal and pain she endured made it hard to trust him again. However, seeing him humbled and genuinely remorseful tugged at her heart. She looked down at their son, who reached out his tiny hands toward Solomon, and she knew deep inside that their family deserved a chance to heal. "I won't lie, Solomon. It's not easy to just forgive everything and pretend like the past didn't happen. But I can see that you're really trying. You're willing to change, and that means something to me," Naomi said softly, her voice filled with both caution and warmth. "I'm willing to come back, but only if you prove that you're serious about putting our family first." Tears welled up in Solomon's eyes as he realized that Naomi was giving him the opportunity he had prayed for. He nodded eagerly. "I promise, Naomi, I'll work every day to show you that you and our son are my top priority. I won't let you down again." After a long conversation, they decided it was time to rebuild their lives together. Naomi packed her things, and they returned home as a family. For the first time in a long time, their house was filled with warmth and hope. Solomon was determined to make every moment count, from being there for their son to making sure Naomi felt valued and loved. In the weeks that followed, Solomon proved his commitment through small, meaningful gestures, helping with the baby, spending quality time together, and supporting Naomi in every way possible. He even encouraged her to go back to work, understanding how much she had sacrificed for the family. Naomi's heart slowly began to heal as she saw how much Solomon had truly changed. They talked openly about the past, addressing their pain and mistakes, but also focusing on building a stronger foundation for the future. Their love, once nearly destroyed, was rekindling into something deeper and more resilient. Their journey was not without its challenges, but this time they faced them together as a united front. Solomon no longer chased after temporary pleasures or allowed himself to be swayed by manipulation. His love for Naomi and their son guided every decision he made, and in return, Naomi found herself falling in love with him all over again. As they settled into a new chapter of their lives, there was a sense of peace that hadn't existed before. They were a family again, stronger than ever, and determined to protect the bond they had nearly lost. Solomon and Naomi knew that love, trust, and commitment were the keys to their happiness, and this time they weren't going to let anything come between them. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.